go, hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you guys?
Oh my gosh, everyone has been raving and raving and raving about your book and your story and just, oh my gosh, I hope
Oh,
your ears are burning and so thank you.
I'm so excited to be here, Zibby. I love following you. It's just so delightful.
Oh, I love you.
Just everything that you're doing to help promote authors and stories is just beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Well, I have a lot of book lovers here who are particularly loving your book.
Thank you.
Had a bunch of different questions, and I want to open it up to
Yeah,
people in the club to ask you directly. But maybe I could
yeah.
just kick it off with, um, uh, well, somebody was interested even in the process of the ghostwriting. Who is the woman on the cover with you? How much, like, how did that whole relationship work? Because we loved, everybody loved the actual writing and the story and everything.
Yeah. Well, we worked really collaboratively. I like to say it took a village to write American Daughter. It went through so many iterations, so many processes because my story is so layered and it was really, really hard book to write. And we didn't want it to be linear. You know, we love the structure. Some people have balked at that, but I love the structure because that's really how it happened. I was going to interviews with my mother and I was coming home and writing. So, how it happened is I did all the initial writing. I wrote pages and pages and pages. So, I did all like the writing process. Alyssa and I worked together to create the structure. And Alyssa did so much beautiful writing in the book. And then I also had a really great editor because I self published first just because I didn't know anything about the publishing world. And I knew that I would give my book the most attention of anybody in the world. And so that was how I did it. And then HarperCollins bought it 2 weeks after I published it because it went straight to #1 bestseller as a self published book, which is unheard of, really. And I've had a wonderful time working with HarperCollins since.
Yeah, that was another question. Somebody here, I don't know where she is now. Oh, Fran. Here, Fran, unmute and tell Stephanie about your experience.
Hi, Stephanie. Your book is
Hi.
amazing. No, I had said at the beginning that I read your book when it first came out as a self-published book. I found it in the back of the New York Times Book Review Sunday section, and I
Oh,
read the little blurb and thought it sounded interesting. So I went on
wow.
Amazon, got it, and then it like disappeared. I was recommending it to everyone I knew, and nobody could find it, or could find it only for like twice the price and didn't understand. So I was just curious what that process was, what had happened.
Yeah, they bought it 2 weeks later. I mean, we still sold so many copies. But yeah, it was going for like $50, $100. I was so
Right.
excited about that. Like, made me feel great. But yeah, we took it off the market, so it's been really hard for people to obviously get the book. We don't want them to. We want them to buy this new iteration that Harper and we worked with the my editor. I feel like we really just made it as beautiful as we could now.
Diane in the chat, by the way, was asking, how did you promote the book so that it made it to #1? Like, what was your secret? What'd you do?
Oh, I did stuff that they say you shouldn't do. I wrapped every single book in gold because you know I'm a designer, right? If you follow me, I'm totally nuts with design. I wrapped everything in gold paper and twine, and I hand wrote every note to every person. So I sent it to the New York Times, they picked it up. I sent it to the Today Show, they picked it up. And so like CBS and People Magazine and everybody. And I don't know if it was the gold paper. I don't know. It was the wrapping. It's all about the look. So that's what I did. And I don't know. I just think that it was just the time for the story to come out, and you know all the different aspects of my story have really connected with people. So I have people writing me every day basically saying this story connected with me personally, people who've been abused or trauma or mental illness. I mean, I feel like my story connects to just everybody, you know, at a different point in their life.
So true. Well, there are questions coming in the chat, but I also wanted people, does anybody want to ask a question? If so, unmute yourself and you can just hop in if anybody wants to ask. If not, I'll just keep reading from the chat.
Can I
Can I ask a question? Okay. Stephanie, your book was absolutely beautiful. It was beautiful inside, as beautiful as the gold paper. But my question is, what do you think? I mean, it's very rare for somebody to survive and thrive in that kind of an upbringing. I mean, I know that. What do you think it was that really gave you the strength to crawl out of this literal cardboard box and thrive like you have? Is there anything that you want to mention that wasn't in the book?
There's so many great, that's such a great question. And it's not something I completely know or understand. I mean, I'm incredibly resilient and I'm so goal-oriented. I was goal-oriented as a child. I was always looking for what it is I wanted. From the first time I saw that house on the bus that was a home, I knew, and I said to myself, I will have that someday, just like I write in the book. I'm just that way, you know. I didn't like how education was, so I started my own schools. You know, I don't know exactly what it is other than that I'm really resilient. And because I've been through, sounds weird, I've been through everything. So it's kind of like, what more can you take from me, or what can happen? I have that kind of carefree attitude in a lot of ways that I'm just willing to try. You know, I wrote about my husband, who I really feel saved my life. I met him when I was 15 and he truly saved my life. I've had him by my side other than when I almost left for Owen, as you know, y'all read. That was an awkward part for my husband to read in the book. But other than that, he's been by my side. So I don't know for sure, because most of my siblings are mentally ill or been in prison and jail, and they didn't make it out. And so I don't know what all those answers are. Hard to know.
That was another question that we were chatting about before you joined, which is what your relationship is like now with your siblings.
Yeah, I was really careful about being sensitive to them. But as I've written the book and talked about, they really don't care. And I don't have a relationship with my siblings because most of them are mentally ill or been in prison. You know, there's a lot of mental illness, from borderline personality to my brother, Pablo, I think, was diagnosed with 5 different illnesses, incredibly dangerous. He makes my mom look like a walk in the park, to be honest. So I don't feel like with a lot of times with trauma that all relationships can be healed, you know. And obviously I wanted this relationship with my mother more than anything in the world, because I love my mother and I think a mother-daughter relationship is so strong, but not necessarily with my siblings. And I wish them well, you know. I kind of see them as they're like my mom's other kids. They never really felt like siblings, especially after we were all separated, when we all went to the dependent unit and we were all put into these horrendous foster homes. Nobody ever really recovered from that in the family. I hope that makes sense, because the family was ripped apart. You know, like when I was living on the beach with my siblings, I know it sounds awful, but I was also very happy there because we were all together, sleeping together. We were foraging for food together. But then when we were all separated, the trauma was so deep that everybody kind of spiraled into mental anguish and illness and all that.
So sorry to hear all of that. I mean, just, it's like one thing after another. Do you know, like,
Yeah.
just like you keep taking these blows and you're just like, I don't know, like water off a duck's back or something. Just like, amazing.
I know. And I am a very positive person, and I do find humor in stuff that people might not think are funny. And so I apologize. I think when you've been through trauma and the kind of story and life that I have, you do find the joy and the humor in a lot of things. And I do.
Wow.
It's a survival. Like a lot of comedians have been through a ton of trauma, and that's how they're so funny. That doesn't make any sense probably, but it does to me.
Wait, now I have to ask, did your husband, you hadn't shared any of that with him until the book?
Oh, that was the hardest part about that book. No, not all of it. No. You know, when I tell him to go drop off the draperies to Owen's house, I mean, he did that. Like he walked into Owen's house and I was laughing. I think that was like my way of coming clean. You know, that was my way of like, you can take the draperies over. I'm done, you know, and that was my way. And so a lot of it he didn't know. That was really hard. That's what happens when you write a memoir. It affects everybody. But, you know, like Zibby, and you wrote about this, my husband and I started over after all that happened, and we started dating each other as if we didn't know each other. And this went on for years. We would go on these dates, and we kind of realized, because we met so young, that we would still be married to today. Like we got to start over because of that. We got to act like we just met, and it kind of transformed our marriage to what it is today. So I have no regrets that happened, and I needed to experience other relationships. I had never done that.
Well, I know I've told you before, that was one of my favorite parts, is that because you just don't read it very often where people admit what they don't do as much, you know, like in all, and also the love story that your husband and you have now. I mean, anyway, I've always loved that. So.
Thanks, Zibby.
I say always. I mean, I've only read it like a year. Anyway, I've always loved your work. Does anybody else want to ask questions? Otherwise, I can. If you want to, just unmute and hop in, or oh, go ahead, Carolyn.
Okay. How do your older sons? They must have read your book. How did they respond to the story? And it's really amazing. I mean, I'm so deeply touched by it. Thank you for writing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. My kids are all incredibly supportive. My older son is just very supportive. My younger son, he's on the spectrum, and so he just couldn't read the book at all. Actually, it just was too painful for him. I think he got through chapter 2, and he was just like crying, and it just, you know, I spared my kids from all of this. Probably not in the healthiest way. I wouldn't do it this way now, that my kids would have to read about their mother's story in a book, because I gave them this idyllic life. You know, every day was perfect. And that's not what I would do now. Now I would share more of my story and be more authentic to them instead of doing it the way that I did it. I just wanted to protect them from everything because of what had happened to me. And so that's definitely, if I was going to have a regret, it would be that I wasn't more authentic with my kids.
Oh, that's so touching.
Can I ask one question? Did you go into therapy, and if so, when, and did it help?
I've been in therapy. We're celebrating our 10-year anniversary, my therapist and I. Just kidding. No, we really are. I've been in therapy. I really love therapy. It's been so helpful. And I did a therapy called Emdr around a lot of the sexual abuse and the abuse that I suffered. And before I entered therapy, I had a lot of like post-traumatic stress, where I would have flashbacks of what happened to me in the foster home and the dependent unit, and everything that I went through. I would have flashbacks, and I would just try to shove them away. But at a certain point, you have to deal with that trauma. And I did, and I'm so thankful. And that's how I was able to write American Daughters, because I did the work in my life to heal from all this trauma. You can't go through what I went through without it. I don't believe that is even possible. So I do like to talk to people about other therapies like EMDR, not just talk therapy, but therapy for trauma can be life-changing. And I feel like I'm a whole person, healed. I don't have flashbacks anymore. I'm able to share my story. You know, obviously I'm emotional because I miss my mother, and I only got to have her for a couple months. So a lot of times I do start to cry in these interviews because I only got what I wanted for such a short time, you know, and I'm gonna cry again every time. So that's probably the hardest part for me, is that I missed what we have. But yeah, all the therapy that I did has helped to transform my life, to be able to talk to everybody about my story.
Wait, what is EMDR? What is that?
Oh, Debbie, that's a hard question. I'll have to text you.
Oh,
It's the eye sensory. So basically what it is basically you have to relive the experience in your head. So you're thinking about like what happened to me in my foster home while they take this kind of wand thing and they move it back and forth in your eyes. And what it does is it releases the trauma from your brain. So it takes the trauma out of your brain, almost like a balloon, just like it just comes out. And so, but the hardest part is that you have to relive it in your head and talk about it while they're doing this. And they keep doing this over and over and over until you can't remember. I can remember what happened, but I don't feel what happened. It doesn't affect me.
wow.
Hey, Zibby, Stephanie, thank you so much for your book. I'm Megan. I am a trauma therapist, and EMDR is the modality that I most primarily use. And I am so grateful that you just talked about it and that you described it so beautifully.
Did I?
And
Okay. I didn't want to mutilate what you're doing because
no, you did a great job. And I think you maybe don't say it in the book, but you say it in the acknowledgements, I think.
Yeah, I do.
And I just loved reading it because I think the image that we have in Hollywood is like you sit on someone's couch and cry and talk about your problems. And what you're describing is actual treatment for memories. And it is. So it's the bilateral stimulation, which is the movement that helps take the memory from where it is in your brain and spread it across your entire brain. So traumatic memories are like orange juice concentrate that are stamped into one part of your brain, and you revisit them exactly as they were frozen there. And EMDR uses your optic nerve to bring your thinking from here and the trauma from back here online electrically at the same time. And the way I always describe it is like it takes the image and it rips it up into tiny little paper, like a Pointel picture, and spreads it across your brain. So it's still there, but it goes from like a fine marker permanent drawing to kind of watercolor. And I think you're right, Stephanie. I don't think anybody lives, the kind of thing that you're describing. I don't think anyone ever has but you, without being able to regulate themselves with a lot of help. Yeah. And again, like you did, and I think you were telling your story. I don't think you were trying to like help the world of therapy, but that moment when you describe you and Jim are at a party and the cuckoo clock, I knew what was coming, and you described it so perfectly. It's like a normal, average, nothing thing. It's a cuckoo clock, but it hijacks you out of that moment and you're regulated. And I was just so incredibly grateful for that scene because it's a perfect description of how trauma, how it takes over your life if you don't treat it, right? Like you can't stay at parties, or you can't go to Switzerland, or.
Well, I used to get flashbacks from absolutely anything. I could see a picture of a family together, and I'd be right back on the beach when our family or at the hotel when my family was pulled away. Like it was everything until EMDR came into my life, and there's a lot of other treatments that go along with that. But if you've had trauma, and it could be anything, it doesn't have to be my story. That EMDR can help transform your life. And it can help you to do anything that you want to do. Actually, it's not just for trauma. It actually helps to strengthen you as a person. And so I think it's been 10 years ago. I wouldn't have been this person sitting here with you and Zibby and all this wonderful people talking about this. I would have been crying probably. I'm not the person that I am today. Also, writing a book transforms you as a person too. I mean, the whole process of writing this book, doing the work with my mother, it's just, I'm just transformed in a different person because of it. I recommend it for everybody. And so Zibby does too. It's about telling stories. And I have a podcast coming out called Overcoming. And we're going to be talking to extraordinary people who've overcome to share with people, because it's just so important to me that people feel connected and hopeful. And I think that's what American Daughter is doing too, is connecting people through all these different pieces of my story.
What was it like? When you were actually in it, like writing that first draft and everything? Were you crying the whole time? Like, what was that like? Like, where did you do that? Tell us more about your process and everything. I'm always so.
Well, my process was really live, Zibby. I was going to the hospital and I was doing interviews with my mother. I did an interview at a psych ward with my mother because I didn't know she was going to die. The day I found out about who my grandparents were was at a psych ward with my mom in a bubble room. I don't know if you've ever been to psych wards. I ask everybody and nobody claims that they have been. And if they were, they don't want to admit it. Just kidding. But I was there with my mother. I was taking notes about my grandparents, like thinking this has to be another delusion, and I went home. So, and then the writing started. I mean, just everything, every piece I was getting from my mother was all written. And then that's how this happened. This book is live. My mother was dying. I needed answers, and I was not going to let her die without me getting these answers. I wasn't going to let her scare me with her mental illness anymore. I was getting what I needed. And so that's how this happened to be. It was like I was going there. I was recording everything, just like I share. I mean, so much was coming out. Even the photograph of my book cover, this picture of me was found in a box at my mother's house during an interview when I found all the pictures. Do you guys all remember about Dominic being kidnapped? But he really wasn't kidnapped. I found photos of him with this photo of me in a box every year of his life that she'd been getting, while telling us he died and while telling us that he was kidnapped. And in getting the truth of that story out, I found this picture of me that made the cover of my book. I mean, it was just, so many ways, it was really miraculous. I mean, I really feel that. My mom lived 2 years. They gave her 6 months. When I first started, she had cancer in her spine. Like, it stopped so that we could do this. I mean, there's just no explanation for it, so that we could do this work and so that we could find love for each other, everything. So that, I hope that answers your question. It was a really live experience. American Daughter is a very, very alive book. It wasn't like I did this and then 10 years later I decided to write a book. I wrote this while doing the work with my mother, while getting therapy, all of it. I mean, the timeline's a little wonky just because I wanted to get the whole story in. Like, I wasn't going to have an affair with Owen while I was working with my mom. Do you know what I mean? Like, we had to kind of weave pieces together to get the whole story in.
I feel like what you said earlier, my mother was dying and I needed answers. I feel like that should be like the movie trailer or something. I mean, seriously, because that's like what was happening was this countdown.
It was.
Is there going to be a movie?
We're working on a mini series right now with like amazing Oscar-winning people. So I'm really excited. That's all in the works, but I think a mini series would be a better choice, just because there's so many layers to the story. So yeah.
Awesome. All right, I keep.
Go
ahead.
Can I jump in and have a question?
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of things that really stand out to me in the book. Sorry, I'm walking and the video is crazy. One is that like the powerful bond and love between a mother and a daughter, and that just came through, particularly towards the end of the book when you were working so hard to get your answers. But I just you captured that so incredibly, and I don't think everyone would come out of that experience the way you have, with that kind of takeaway. So many people would be resentful and just carry so much pain and so much anger, and the fact that you did not, and you even, one of your final words in the book was, I can't remember the phrase right now, but that you finally had that relationship that you'd always wanted. You always had that mother love. So I just think, as a mom and a daughter myself, that was incredible. And I think also, your book raises so many questions about mental health in our country, the foster care system, the juvenile probation and law enforcement system. Has any part of your life been, doing any kind of advocacy work, or how do you feel about that? And how does that?
Well, I mean, I have a foundation that I'm starting. I'm working with local foster care organizations. I'm working with a mental health. I really see myself as more of a spokesperson because I've lived through every aspect from my own mental health, my mother's severe mental illness, the trauma that she went through with the abduction and the rape. And so, yes, I am definitely working with organizations. Again, because of the mental health treatment that I've gone through, I couldn't even hear about foster kids for years without bawling my eyes out because of the pain, because foster kids are orphans, because I went through all of the foster care system so horribly. And so it was really hard for me. So now that I'm strong and healthy and I've shared my story, I'm absolutely want to advocate for foster kids. I want to be a resource and help to educate. Foster kids go through as much trauma as veterans do who've fought in the war because it happens as a child. So there's just so much trauma. So I absolutely am doing that. I'm working with Project Lemonade, who provides clothes and essentials for foster kids, mental health. Anything I can do to help, I'm all in. I'm whatever I can do to help, I'm here. I want to serve in that way.
I just think that's amazing because there's so few who can stand with a child or hold a child's hand and say, I have been there. And I have felt the way you have felt. I have had a garbage bag with a couple pieces of clothing inside. So, I mean, thank you for the work that you're doing and for your book. It's amazing.
Thank you. The garbage bag for me is like foster kids go from place to place with a garbage sack full of their stuff. I mean, what doesn't say you're trash more than that? It's disgusting. Every kid should have a backpack. If you can do one thing for a foster kid, give them a backpack because that makes them feel like a human being, not a trash bag. Oh, I couldn't even look at trash bags for years. I couldn't look at anything. But I mean, literally, I've been through everything. So I would just be remembering even taking the trash out, what happened to me, my doll being in a trash bag, not, just the inhuman aspect of how foster kids are treated, and things are changing. And that's why I'm giving full ride scholarships to foster kids who want to go to design school like I did. And that's going to change lives. When you give people education, that changes their life. And so I'm all in.
Stephanie, was there ever any consequence for the abuse that you suffered? I wondered about your own story. Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. So this family, my foster family in California, absolutely got away with this. Several girls that they basically got from this orphanage called a dependent unit, and it was all for the sexual perversion of this man, and then also his wife, who was in on it, who did nothing. They're still alive. Obviously, I've researched everybody. They're still alive, got away with it. And because my mother didn't do anything, and I don't know, my mother couldn't even talk about it or didn't, my mom, I'm sure you've noticed, was kind of a sociopath. Did y'all get that from, obviously she had all these personalities. She was so traumatized, but she couldn't feel for anybody. She couldn't feel for me. And so she didn't do anything about it. So they definitely got away, but they will not get away with it. I always say, you can't get away with that long term. You don't get to die in peace when you do stuff like that.
That's right. That's right.
Stephanie, I'm Julie. Thanks for writing the book. I really appreciated it and enjoyed it on so many levels. So I thought it was wonderful. What's next for you? Besides, who's going to play you in the miniseries is, of course, my first question.
I don't know.
But what's next for you? Are you going to keep writing, or what's happening?
I have one more book in me. I was telling you, I'm starting this podcast called Overcoming, and we're talking with extraordinary people. And I really feel like I want to have everybody on there sharing their stories. And that's what I'm really passionate about, is sharing the stories to help people to overcome the strategies. The strategies that I used, even sharing with people about EMDR, that's going to change somebody's life, because somebody's going to go and find that, and they're going to realize their life will never be the same. They will be healed. So all these people who have these stories, who've overcome to be successful, they're going to be sharing that. And that's kind of my passion right now. It's kind of like Zibby is passionate about authors and books. I'm super passionate about this. Zibby is going to be on my show too, sharing her story of overcoming, like, how did she get here? You know, and so that's where my heart is now. And I think I have another book in me.
That's exciting. Good for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay. Can you talk a little about your husband and how he deals with the therapy and how he's dealt with you writing the book and how he feels about all this? Because he is your co-star in a way.
Yeah. Oh, he's such a hero. I just think he's just such a hero. He's my hero. He's so diligent and consistent in my life, and he's just a rock. He's just a rock for me. He's not perfect. We fight. We're a normal couple, but he really, if you ever talk to him, he'll say Owen's a douchebag. That's all he ever says. It was really hard to go through that. He's been so supportive with all my therapy. He instead of letting our marriage fall apart, which it could have, he stepped up and he gave me what I needed, which was relationships and dating. And I wanted to experience things that other people had experienced, that I didn't have a normal childhood. I didn't have a normal relationship. I met my husband in high school. He was my rock. So he gave me what I wanted, those normal relationships, instead of saying, you can't, have an affair or do these things, which I didn't want to. I didn't make that decision to do that. I made the decision to leave and work on my marriage. But he didn't judge me for that. He just changed. He just became what I needed, and gave me those experiences. And that's love, that's love, to give somebody what they needed, even if it seemed wrong to him. And so he's awesome. I wouldn't be here without him. I just think the world of him.
One last question from Carolyn.
Thank you. Hi, Stephanie. I am in awe of your book. It was beautiful and painful, and I give you so much credit for writing it.
Thank you.
And I have so many questions, but I'll just keep it to one or two. Are you still in touch with Owen's mom?
Yes.
She's still your friend?
I love her.
Oh, that's great. I'm so glad to hear that. And now I just forgot my other question. But I think I just want to say, you're like a bottle of sunshine. I feel like your book, like you should bottle yourself, because I was so glad to see your face, not just to read your book, but you have such a great way about you.
Really? Thank you.
Remarkable. Yes, you do. Your smile, everything, your eyes, you just like lit up the whole book club.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you. Well, you should follow me on Instagram if you like design.
Yes.
I'm all over it.
All right.
Thank you for saying that. I do want to say one thing, is that I really wasn't interested in Owen. I wanted his mother.
Oh, I know.
Good. I don't know if I made that clear enough in the book. I wish I would have added.
Very clear. His mother. Yes. And I saw what you needed from her. And I also totally understand, because I think I've had similar feelings. I mean, I loved my mom, but I gravitated toward friends of hers and things. And I could see, wanting to be part of somebody else's family sometimes. And I could see that jealousy too about her children. And even you were like out on the boat with her and things like that. That was really hard, I'm sure.
Well, I always felt like I was from another planet, like I didn't belong where I came from. And now that I had found my history, or do you guys remember when I'm at the bar with Rick and I just start playing the piano? And I don't know if you remember that part, but it's so significant in my life because I felt like I had been abducted. And when I was playing the piano by sound in that bar, when we were just hitchhiking from place to place, probably doing drug deals, I'm pretty sure now that I think about it, I knew that this wasn't my life. Like, I felt like I had been kidnapped. I always felt like that. And then when I found out my mother really was kidnapped and that her life was taken from her, like, it all made sense, And so Owen's mom was the life I thought I should be in. That was where I belonged. And so, but the reality is I created my own family and my own life and my own wonderful world. I didn't need to run off with somebody else's life. I needed to stay with my life and make it amazing. And that's why I'm here today, because I did do that. I did make my life amazing, and I took my life back from all of that.
Wow.
That is very clear. It's impressive.
Oh, thank you.
Stephanie, thank you so much. You
Oh, Zibby,
so inspirational. I just and soaking up every word. Thank you for your book. I mean, I know you referenced that you were trying to help in any way. Now that you have it out, your book alone has helped, I'm sure, people, and has affected, I know, everybody on this Zoom and so many other people so profoundly. And
I'm so happy to hear that. I did find out that my book is in Costco's in Canada.
It's a big time.
Costco. Canada, we need to get it here. Canada loves it. So yeah, thank you, Zibby, for all the work that you're doing to help promote and help authors. I'm just so thankful for you, for not just for me and what you've done for me. I'm gonna cry, but what you're doing for people. It's the same heart that I have to help people to overcome, and you're doing that with authors. And I just think I'm crying. I'm so moved by what you're doing. Thank you. And thank you all for having me.
Zibby?
Yes.
Zibby?
Yes.
I just want to say that, you know, a book like this and a person, this wonderful heroine that we've gotten to know better than even by reading the book, that when one writes into Amazon and gives 5 stars, it elevates the book. And I think that we all could do that for you.
Thank you.
Because your message, your kindness and your message and your healing are so inspirational. And the fact that you've already alluded to that we should all pick up the banner and help others, particularly, you know, children who have lived through what you have lived through. So bravo to
Thank
you.
you.
And 5 stars and many, many more.
Oh my God, you guys, thank you. Yes, all your reviews are so appreciated. It does make a big difference for authors anytime. Unless you don't like the book, that's not helpful. Since you like it. Yes.
Aww.
Thank you for having me. And if you all have any other questions, you always feel free to write me if you need any advice or helping somebody who's been through trauma or EMDR or anything. I am so available for people. I know they're shocked when they write me and they're like, I'm sure your assistant's writing back. It's like, no, I'm writing you back. Like, I'm here for people. So just so you know that.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for joining, and come back
Thank
next week. We're having Anne Lamott, and her new book is so good. If you haven't read it yet, Dusk Dawn.
I'm excited.
Gosh, it's so good. So Stephanie, come back. Come as
I will. I would like to be in your book club. I want to be. I want to come. I want to be part of it.
Be part of it.
I will.
To everybody. It's you know, one
It's
side.
wonderful.
Please come back.
I will. I'm in.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.